What's up everyone, it's King Mush here with JCross X to welcome you all back for episode 35 of Class Overview. For those who aren't familiar, the Class Overview series is a collection of informative videos where we're discussing the different classes in Fire Emblem 3 houses.
We'll be going over general information about each class, like their certification requirements, stats, abilities, and their overall strengths and limitations, determine their viability and what units are a good fit for each class. As per usual, these videos will be gameplay focused, so there shouldn't really be any major spoilers, but I advise you anyways to watch at your own discretion, and if you haven't played 3 houses yet, you absolutely should.
This episode will be focused on the Bishop class. Once again, just like Warlock and Dark Bishop, it's a 4-move class with a mage-like movement archetype, meaning it takes a reduced penalty on Thicket, Stronghold, and Sand tiles compared to standard infantry movement in exchange for a harsher penalty on Water tiles. Bishop has 3 class abilities. The first one is White Magic Uses times 2, which doubles the amount of uses of all the spells in your unit's Faith spell list. The second is White Magic Heal plus 10, which allows you to heal 10 additional HP when healing an ally with White Magic. Finally, it has Terrain Resistance, which prevents you from taking damage from terrain. In order to certify for Bishop, you will need at least an A rank in Faith, though you can gamble the exam at a bit lower. Most units who benefit from this class want to rush their Faith rank to A anyway so they can pick up all their spells, so this isn't too difficult of a requirement. As for skill level bonuses, Bishop has the reverse of Warlock and Dark Bishop, granting a +3 to Faith and +2 to Reason. The Reason boost is nice to help fill out your spell list, and maybe pick up some useful skills like Black or Dark Magic range +1, or Reason level 5. It's also very useful to help you reach the A rank Reason requirement for Gremmery, which is a great upgrade from Bishop for female units. As for the Faith boost, unless you gamble the Bishop exam at below an A rank, I don't think it's very useful. The rewards for raising Faith after A rank are all focused on offensive white magic, which is very niche and not something most units want to build around. I don't think Bishop gets quite as much value from its skill level bonuses as Warlock and Dark Bishop do, but they're still decent.
Looking at the base stats, Bishops are very similar to the other advanced magic classes, with the standout of Magic and Res being 15 for both stats instead of 17 Magic. Given that the rest of the stats are the same, this means Bishop's bases are objectively worse than Warlock and Dark Bishop. On the contrary, Bishop actually has superior growth rates, which are generally more important in this stage. It has the low standard magic class HP growth of +10%, while also having a +10% boost in luck, charm, and most importantly, magic. It also shares the same +5% to res and -5% to defense that Dark Bishop and Warlock also have. Although these percentages are nothing crazy in regards to the advanced stage, they're still easily the best in regards to the magic classes for the time. Similar to Priest, most of Bishop's boosts are focused on the res, with a whopping +5 for the stat, which definitely makes it one of the best classes for res tanking. Although this means its magic boost is lower than the previous 2 classes at only +2, this is still somewhat useful for healing and contributing to the range of certain support spells. Lastly, the class is a +1 to both HP and Dex, which is nothing too noteworthy, but still appreciated nonetheless. Overall, Bishop offers a really healthy growth potential in comparison to the other magic classes, with a trade-off of slightly worse bases. Having less magic in the boost is somewhat unfortunate, but at least provides some while offering a res tanking niche.
Upon mastering Bishop, you will unlock the equipable ability Renewal. When you have Renewal equipped, you will automatically recover up to 20% of your max HP at the start of each turn. It's a very simple ability that operates completely passively without any specific activation conditions, aside from just being below full HP. Compared to Life Taker from the previous episode, Renewal is more consistent, but has a lower ceiling for how much health you can restore, and you also have much less control over when you are healed or how much you are healed. I think it's debatable which of the 2 abilities are better, but either way, I don't think Renewal is very useful at all. Again, just like Life Taker, these self-healing abilities will be better on a frontline unit that takes more hits. Bishops are usually among your most frail units, and in higher difficulties, they are unlikely to survive if they get attacked, so it is paramount to avoid them taking any damage in the first place. Since the class also has terrain resistance, that's one less source of damage you can potentially take to get value from Renewal as well, which makes this even more situational. Of course, this ability isn't only usable in Bishop, but most promotion options for Bishop still have those same issues. Like I mentioned already, it could be better on a frontline class if you're willing to put in all the investment and grinding to master Bishop on them. However, this game has such an abundance of healing that I really don't think self-healing abilities like this are necessary.
Bishop is a very comfortable support class that has quite a few strengths. As I said previously, the class has one of, if not the best spread of growths for the Magic Advanced Stage classes. While the boosts aren't as impactful for Magic, the big bump to res that this class provides gives it a niche as a res tank that can bait out enemy mages while still being able to support the rest of your units. Its first class ability, White Magic Uses times 2, provides a lot to units who have strong Faith spell lists, as doubling the uses of strong support spells is invaluable, and the only other class that provides that is a Generalic Master class. Obviously Gremmery is great, but Bishop is not too much worse, which is why this ability alone makes this class endgame ready. Double Physics with White Magic Heal +10 provides some of the best healing in the game, and as such is definitely the strongest class for that specific purpose. The major spell that a lot of people associate with this class though is Warp. Warp is a support spell that allows a friendly mage to teleport an allied unit within a certain range scaling off their magic. This spell only has 1 cast, but with this class you have doubled warps, and if you have 2 bishops as friendly units, you can potentially have 4 warps depending on who you recruit. Linhardt, Lysithea, Manuela, and Happy all acquire this spell at some point throughout ranking up their faith, and some of these can make for good candidates for Bishop. Obviously that might be a bit overkill, but if you aren't just straight up skipping an entire map in one turn, having multiple uses of this spell can be very helpful. Additionally, Rescue is another strong support spell that only has 3 casts, where doubling it to 6 can be quite potent for a support unit. Although Darkflyer is generally the better class for rescue users such as Flane or Bernadetta, Darkflyers aren't nearly as spammable as something like Wyvern Riders given the limitation of only one flying magic battalion existing in this game. Bishop is grounded, and as such has access to strong magic-oriented battalions with support gambits, just like the other magic classes. Lastly, even though bishops are much more vulnerable to physical damage than the magical, being able to actually have guard adjutants given its grounded status is also helpful to boost their survivability.
Bishop is a great class, but it does have a few weaknesses. This is starting to get really repetitive, but its biggest weakness is its movement. Once again, having only 4 move is pretty awful for this point in the game. Granted, if using Physic, then your movement doesn't really matter much since the range is so generous. However, the lack of movement definitely hurts Bishop's ability to use certain utility spells, namely Rescue. Even though Bishop grants you twice as many casts of Rescue, it's often better to use Darkflyer instead, since Darkflyer's high movement and Canto makes each usage of Rescue more impactful, even if you don't get to use it as many times per map. Aside from the movement, Bishop also has nothing to benefit its combat whatsoever, which pretty much relegates it entirely to support. That's fine on some units, but on units that have a good balance of both offensive and supportive options, Bishop's class abilities can limit their potential a bit. Also, unlike many of the other advanced classes, Bishop is nearly completely outclassed by a master class, Gremory. This isn't always true because male units can't use Gremory, and Gremory also lacks White Magic Heal plus 10 its Ray resistance, but neither of those are very impactful. Sometimes the extra healing for Bishop is nice, but not always. If you have units who rely on HP thresholds, it can actually be more helpful at times to have smaller and therefore more precise heals to avoid overhealing allies past their thresholds. That mostly covers all the weaknesses of Bishop. It does hurt slightly that its magic stat boost is lower than Warlock and Dark Bishop, but a plus 2 is still pretty good.
Given the support capabilities this class has, we think an 8 out of 10 is a fair rating for it. As I mentioned earlier, it's the only other class in the game aside from Gremory that gives white magic uses times 2, which is invaluable for most support-oriented units. The ghosts are great too, so even though the boosts are arguably worse than Dark Bishop and Warlock, units in this class most certainly won't fall behind on their actual bases. Its only main competition is Gender Locked, which even though that isn't too big of a deal since most spellcasters are female, it still does some things a bit better, such as Pure Healing, while also being a lower investment option for units, especially those who have a Reason Bane. Given how strong some of the utility is present in white magic, some of the best units for this class have a strong Faith spell list. That being said, our standout recommendation is most certainly Linhardt. Due to him being male, this is arguably just his best endgame class due to having access both to double Physic and double Warp. There really aren't too many other good options for him since offensively he's not a very potent unit to begin with. His healing, while decent, isn't as good as some of the other white mages available in this game, so the white magic heal plus 10 can actually be pretty useful on him, assuming you aren't trying to keep units below certain HP thresholds. As for other choices, Manuela is probably the second best unit for the class. Even though she can access Gremory, her Reason Bane makes the class quite high investment for her, meanwhile she starts at B Faith making Bishop extremely low investment for her, and as such you can acquire double Warp on her quite fast. As for other Warp users I mentioned earlier, Happy and Lysithea, they can make for great Bishops too, but Valkyrie does provide strong competition. I also brought up Rescue earlier, and of the units that possess that spell and can make decent Bishops, those are definitely Flane and Constance, with Bernie being a more niche option. Generally prefer all 3 of these units in Darkflyer given the amazing mobility for a spellcasting class. Bishop still has an argument to be made for them given how aggressive you can be on maps while having access to 6 rescues on one unit, assuming you can keep your Bishops in safer tiles. Additionally, if you don't have a better option for some House White Mages who have high potential for healing, this can be a good class for them. These generally include the already mentioned Linhardt, Mercedes, and Marianne. As for Marianne, I won't go into the specifics as there are other videos we'll be talking about her more, but for us personally, we usually think she's better off in a more offensive-oriented class.
With all that being said, I think A tier is a fair spot for Bishop. It's an excellent transitional class that is still endgame viable on a few units. It's a simple class, but it provides a very noticeable power spike for support units due to white magic uses times 2. It can be argued that Bishop is carried by how strong Warp is, but it's still a very good class in its own right. The poll on my channel has Bishop ranks the lowest among the advanced stage magic classes. Though to be fair, if you account for the fact that Warlock and Dark Bishop are sharing a slot, it would probably be slightly above both those. The only classes definitively voted above it are Valkyrie and Dark Flyer, which is fair, though I personally think Bishop is on a similar level of viability to both those classes. It's possible it's underrated due to being a more selfless class. It doesn't have as much potential for combat and flashiness as those other two do. Just like Warlock, since it's a simple class, there weren't too many comments about it, but the common consensus is that it's a good class for utility units, but it's outclassed by Gremory on most units later on, which is fine. It still remains very viable for at least 10 levels, and it arguably provides a bigger power spike than Gremory. When you consider how mediocre Priest is for his time, it's nice to finally get a rewarding class for the time spent training your faith. That's basically all I have to say about the Bishop class. If you like the video or have any thoughts of your own, please leave a like and make sure to comment.
I also recommend checking the description if you're not already subscribed to both of our channels.
Bishop marks the end of the advanced classes. Stay tuned for episode 36 on JCross's channel. We're moving on to the first special class, Trickster.